If you're a dentist and you want to maximize the value of your practice, you are in the right place. I'm Dr. Carlo Biasucci, and in this video, we're going to talk about how to do exactly that. Well, hello everyone, and welcome. I have a presentation for you today about selling your practice for maximum value. So how can you take your practice and get the greatest value out of it? Why would you want to do that? Well, obviously your practice is your biggest asset for most dentists. If you're a dentist and you're looking to retire at some point, which we all are, there's a point where you need to extract the value out of what you've built. And you spend most of your time and energy in your practice, so it makes sense that that's where most of your wealth is stored up. The problem is that we don't treat that asset as a true investment. And so we're going to talk through this presentation today about how to maximize the value of your practice so that when that day comes and you decide to liquidate, to cash out, to retire, whatever that looks like, you're going to get the greatest return on that. So really quick disclaimer, none of what I'm going to share today is meant as legal or financial advice or a guarantee of results. I'm going to share what worked for me, what works for our clients, and then you're responsible for what you do with that. So I've been a dentist for 20 years. I built a very successful practice. I sold that practice and I bought more. I've seen this game from both sides, so I know what it looks like on the start a practice, build a practice side, all the way to sell a practice, to build a group of practices, and eventually to exit from that at some point, which I haven't done yet. But I've seen this game from many different angles. And so I'll tell you a bit about my story very quickly and give you some practical tips on how you can make your practice reach maximum value in the shortest time. So you know that we run a company called Elite Practice. Elite Practice is the largest provider of training to dentists in Canada, and we have a growing presence in the US as well. Our program is actually guaranteed. Our transformation program has a guarantee of results. And if you want to know more about that, just reach out to our team. They'll tell you all about it. I've written 5 books at this point. There's another one that is very, very soon to come out. I also publish a quarterly magazine. Many of you watching this will have received our magazines, and they're full of great practice information, basically only practice growth content. There's nothing in there. There's no ads. There's no third party, anything. It's just our content. So very quickly about me. Like I said, I've been a dentist for more than 20 years now. I built a large multi-doctor clinic that grew from 2.4 million to 7.2 million in 3 years. We had 17 chairs, 10 dentists, 12,000 active patients, and about 43 team members. And I cut my chairside time in half while I tripled the practice. So we truly did build a self-managing practice, which is the thing that we teach. We had 175 new patients per month for 5 straight years. I did this in a small town of 75,000 with nothing around us. Yeah, so it was a big practice and we had a lot of fun doing it. We learned a ton, and that is what it became version 1 of the transformation program. Eventually, obviously, after having done this for 10 years now, our program has morphed into an extremely efficient and effective program. So we built the practice in our community, not just any practice, but the practice that everyone knew, that everyone was talking about. We created a huge buzz, so much so that when we had events like this one here with our mayor and member of parliament here, we had 6,000 people come through this event. So that's how you know you're making noise in your community, when you have that kind of presence. But it didn't start that way. In fact, I was what I would call conventionally successful, and it looked like I had everything put together on the outside. Things looked like everything was going well as far as anyone could tell. But what people couldn't see from the outside is that I was frustrated, exhausted, and pretty much burned out from practice. Then I found out what rock bottom really looks like. I was scuba diving with my wife on a vacation in 2012. And I had an injury on this dive, and it was the last dive I ever went on again because it took me out of practice for 6 months. It took me a full year to recover. And so during that time, I was just so tired, so frustrated with my practice. I gave myself an ultimatum: fix the practice or quit dentistry completely. And I was dead serious about that. So I spent that whole year studying practice growth and marketing, what the best businesses out there are doing, how they are able to manage a team of 1,000 or more, and I'm struggling with 12. I needed to know what the deal was, what was I getting wrong, and how can I fix this? And I did. I actually became, and I would say competent, very competent in the 4 pillars that we teach today, which is leadership, systems, team training, marketing. The 4 pillars of a successful practice. In fact, the four pillars of any successful business. And transformational results ensued. In fact, yes, we tripled the practice in 3 years and I cut my work week in half. We went from 2.4 million to 7.2 million in that 3-year time frame. So let's get into selling your practice for maximum value. When we talk through the Elite Practice program, we talk through the 7 areas of practice growth. And so we're going to touch on some of these today. Primarily, we're going to focus our time on leadership, on marketing, on systems, on training, and we're going to work through how this applies to selling your practice for maximum value. Again, what I can't do is teach you a 3-year program in 45 minutes, but I can give you a whole bunch of ideas and a whole bunch of actionable content that you can take away and use immediately. So what are we going to learn? When should you start thinking about exit strategy? How to calculate maximum production for your practice? What buyers are really looking for so you can get top dollar? 3 ways to grow your practice, how to maximize those, why you must be fully in control of your marketing, creating sustainable growth, differentiating your practice in a crowded market, and tipping the balance in your favor from a marketing perspective. So let's jump into this. When dentists come to us, they typically come to us in 3 forms. One is ready to sell like soon. One is ready to sell in the next, it's on the horizon, the next 2-3 years. And one is, I'm not ready to sell. I just want to maximize the value of my practice. I want to grow my practice. I want to solve a problem. I'm working too hard. I want more time off. I want more freedom. I want a better system, a better run office. I want my team, who I already pay, to be able to do more. And if you're in any of those categories, you're in the right place. So if you are interested in selling sooner, well, the transformation program actually works quite well for that, because I have many case studies of dentists who joined our program and sold within 2, 3, 4 years of joining the program and dramatically added value to their practice. So the first example here on the far left is Lanny Jacob in Winnipeg, 2.5 years, doubled the practice. Dr. Birchfield, 4 years, doubled the practice. Dr. Swanland, 4 years, tripled the practice. Right? Triple the practice, triple the sale value. So if you want to just really quick math on, does it make sense to grow your practice? How much value am I leaving on the table? What can I extract if I put some energy and some money into growing my practice, the thing that I already know how to do, instead of looking for these dentists are funny sometimes. Like, we look for these like shiny objects and these things to invest in. Oh, I'm going to go put my money in this. Oh, I'm going to invest in that. Oh, my buddy told me about this thing. But then there's your practice, like the thing you know. And I'll show you here, if we just take $1 million practice, and this practice gets, say, 43% growth over 2 years, which is not out of range for our clients, okay? I'm not going to guarantee that that's what you're going to get, but that's a number that we've pulled out of our own data, okay? So if this happens, then 2 years from now, this practice is now producing $1,430,000. Over the next 10 years, that's another 430,000 times 10. Pretty good deal, right? On top of the $1 million they were already producing. So, you're doing okay just by putting a little energy into growing your practice. Like, I don't see why you would want to do anything else. Now, we took this from the profit perspective, because 430,000 times 10 is obviously 4.3 million, but we're assuming that 60% of that goes to bottom line. And so we could say that 60% of 430 is 258,000. Well, that times 10 is 2.58 million. So that's the additional profit. If you wanted to continue growing your practice, let's say I'm not really ready to retire. I just want to grow my practice and run at max value. Well, I'm now gaining so much over the time that I want to continue practicing. If you look at sale value growth, well, that 258,000 in new profit at a 6 times multiple is almost 1.6 million in additional sale value. Now you capture that right after you start to be able to prove you can do it. So after year 2, your practice is worth that much more. Right? Now, this is just rough math. I mean, there's obviously some additional nuances that go into this, but to give you an idea, if you invested $90,000 into the program, you could see as much as 45 times return on your money, assuming these things occur. Now, let's say you only got half that result, and that's a 22.5 times return on your money. Are you getting anywhere near that in the stock market today? Like, really? Right? So where do you put your money? Invest in what you know. So as I was building my practice, I always wanted to have, and I had, a handle on the value of the practice. Not that I had an intention to sell it, but I always wanted to know what my potential was. So I recommend every dentist to have a 5-year exit strategy in mind, even if you think you're going to practice another 10 or 20 years. Why? Because running at max value does many things. First, it means you're going to have the best team, the best marketing strategy in place, the best systems, and the best profitability you can have. And I would argue more importantly, if something happens to you, like what happened to me, and you're taken out of practice unexpectedly, then you're able to maintain the value of your biggest asset. This is just huge. In fact, I can tell you about one client in particular where this scenario exactly happened, and he was able to not practice for an entire year, and the practice just kept running and was profitable. Your practice is where you invest most of your time and energy. It's where most of your net worth is stored up. So we need to pay proper attention to it. So if you're going to sell your practice for maximum value, how do you know what your maximum revenue potential is in the practice? We should look at that, right? What's the most I can produce with my practice the way I have it? How do I know that I'm at max value? Well, you take the number of operatories, you multiply by 500,000, and that tells you what your production should be per year. That's a really good, healthy number. Now, it can get above that. Then we got to really dial in systems and efficiency, but you're starting to become limited by capacity, by space at that point. So a 6-chair practice, as an example, would be times 500,000. That's 6 times 500,000 is 3 million. So $3 million in annual production. That's where you're going to land for a very well-run practice. Okay. Yeah, you can get higher than that. I've had practices up, 550, 600, but it gets real busy, real crazy because you're running out of space. 500 seems to be that sweet spot where you can get there. That's sort of a great test to know, do I need to expand or not, right? So if you look at how you just finished up this past year versus that number you just calculated, what's your gap? And if your gap is significant, then we have a lot of money we're leaving on the table right now. Now, of course, revenue does not equal sale value, but it's a starting point because you can't realize a profit margin from production you don't have. So if you maximize your production, you're going to maximize the value of your practice very simply because EBITDA is how most practices are valued and sold. So what is EBITDA? It is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And in general, 25% of revenue of top line ends up being EBITDA, most practices, okay? That's kind of a rule of thumb. And so if you increase your revenue by, $1 million a year, you've increased your EBITDA by 25% of that, or $250,000 per year. At a 6 times multiple, you can see very quickly your practice is worth $1.5 million more. So max value, max production, very closely tied together. So how can we make sure that we get the top end of the EBITDA range? Because you see in every market, there's a range. EBITDA, let's say in your market, might be an average of 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, whatever. But there's a range. Some practices will sell for 4 times. Some practices will sell as much as 8 times, depending on the market, right? Well, how can I make sure I get the top end of that? Now we're going to talk about what are buyers actually looking for and what makes your practice attractive. So what are they really buying? They're really looking to buy cash flow. In fact, the more stable and predictable that cash flow is, the more valuable the business. And the less that cash flow is tied to one person, the more valuable the business is. So the bottom line is the more likely a person can buy your business and it keeps producing the cash flow that it has, and ideally even grows in their hands, the more valuable the business is, plain and simple. It's true whether we're talking about a dental practice or any other business on the planet. So predictable cash flow is a result of predictable business operations, right? Pretty straightforward. If your business is not predictable in its operation, your cash flow is going to be up and down. So what people are actually buying is your system for making money. So there's 3 ways to grow a practice. One is to increase the number of patients, which is a function of marketing. The second is to increase the average transaction size, which is a case acceptance and service mix function. The third is to increase the frequency that the average client buys from you, which is a hygiene or recall function. And each by intentional system to get the result, okay? If you grow each of these 3 by 30%, you double the practice. And if you think about that, it's actually not that hard to grow your new patient flow by 30%. It It's actually not that hard to increase recall frequency by 30%. So if you could see how some of these examples I was showing earlier of people who double or triple the practice, you can get there. And you can do it in a couple of years if you have a clear and intentional system to get there. So to recap, predictable cash flow is a result of predictable business operations. And what people are buying is your system for making money. So you have to have a system for everything. Now, if we're starting to talk about marketing here, this is that first way to grow the practice. Let's get into marketing. We have to have a system for marketing. So what's a system for marketing? Well, we must have a focus on internal and external strategies. Most practices focus on external because it's easier. It seems easier, but it is not. In fact, it's easier, cheaper, and more profitable to keep the patients you already have. If you think about it, your acquisition cost for a new patient might be as much as $200 or $300. Whereas, and that's just for a standard GP patient. If you're marketing for very specific procedures, it'll be a lot higher than that. But the patient you already have, you have them. You've already paid the acquisition cost. It's easier, cheaper, and more profitable to keep the ones you have. And a strong referral program multiplies your best patients. And that's also critical because, again, your cost is much lower and you get generally better patients by referral. Forever chasing new patients is costly and does not provide the same resilience as retention, okay? So internal patient experience is a low-hanging fruit. That is a place that I would always go from a marketing perspective. How can we level up the patient experience? So we have budgets for external marketing, but we don't have budgets for internal marketing, which is a mistake. We don't know the lifetime value of a patient. We don't realize that an average patient in a GP practice might spend $1,500 in their first year, but over 5 years spends about $5,000. Also, democratized versus targeted spending is a problem. If I have a marketing budget of $1,000 and I have 1,000 patients, I spend $1 on each patient for my internal strategy. That's nowhere near as effective as thinking through the fact that the Pareto principle applies. 20% of your patients produce 80% of your income. 20% of your patients produce 80% of your referrals. So I'm going to spend 80% of my budget on the 20%. That's how smart marketers do this. And what about the patient experience? There must be a system. There must be training. There must be monitoring. There must be paying attention of what kind of reviews are we getting? What are people saying about us? Are we getting referrals? Do your employees refer friends to work in your office? This is a big question. If you want to know how your internal systems are going, how your internal marketing is going, is it working on your team? And again, this is a 2-day event, just this for our clients. So I'm just kind of going through it fairly quickly here, but let's talk about external marketing. Okay, so some keys to success. Community focus. I was showing you that example of a community event earlier. And being that practice in the community that everyone knows, that is generous, that does things to give to the community, that is super critical. Multiple strategies need to be mapped out for the year, at least the next 2 quarters. So you have to have a marketing calendar, right, for external. You have to know what's going on. You have to make sure you do things in sequence and you don't forget to do things. You don't stop doing things that worked. You must have a plan that continues. You may need to have a person on this. Maybe you need to hire a person just for marketing when it comes to external strategies. Why? Because there's a lot of time that's necessary, a lot of focus that's needed. You can't just do it between phone calls. You know, the person at the admin desk is not going to be your marketing person in most cases because they don't have time. You should delegate this, but you should never abdicate it. What I mean here is that as the dentist, you should always know what is going on in your marketing. You can delegate components of it, but you should never just give a marketing company your credit card and say, hey, go find me new patients, because now you're just beholden to another party. You're not in control of your destiny, and that's not really a smart way to run a business. And again, this is also a 2-day event for our clients, so I'm just giving you a real high-level overview. Now, what about differentiation? In a crowded market, it's super important that you have something that sets you apart. Why should people come to you and drive by other offices as they come to you? Why should they care that you exist? So you have to be very clear about what that differentiating point is. And there are many things you can differentiate on. One is just being everywhere, being that practice that is marketing everywhere. You're literally in everything that the people interact with in your community, so they just can't get away from you. What you do for the community ties really well into that, because if people are seeing you, but they're seeing you doing good things in the community, well, that's really powerful. Have you been in the community a long time? Your experience, your tenure, that matters. Google ranking is super important now, especially not just raw Google rankings, but also videos. And if you have a lot of good video content and even running that as ads, there's so many things we can talk about. Case studies and testimonials, super important. Print and video matters. Yes, print, depending on the patients you are looking for, print is definitely a viable avenue. And sometimes accepting insurance, if most in your market do not, can be a differentiator. I mentioned community impact in the form of events, so things that people can tangibly see you doing, super important. One key problem that I see is not capturing leads. So most dental marketing has two potential outcomes. One is to book an appointment now or do nothing. So if I get a piece of mail and it's like, come now, book an appointment, special offer, blah, blah, blah. If I don't need that service right now, I'm just going to throw that in the garbage. Whereas, to me, that's a mistake. What about the percent of people who are interested but not today? Maybe they want more information. Maybe they don't know enough about you. What if your marketing had an option to request information in addition to booking now? What if you had the ability to contact interested potential patients or leads right when they engage with your marketing? What if you continued that conversation with them over time by nurturing them, by sending them good information week after week until they make a decision, which is a buying cycle. And the bigger ticket the item is, the longer the buying cycle. This is why when you look up a new car online, they keep sending you emails. Why? Because people don't look up a car and go buy it tomorrow. They generally take months to think about it. The buying cycle is longer. So this would have tremendous value to keep you in front of patients until the need arises. And there's also a tremendous difference in return on your marketing dollars if you have an option for patients to request more information from you. And that allows you to spend more than your competition, because over time you're continuing to nurture those people instead of them just being lost leads. Now you're actually going to be able to convert more over time, which means your marketing return is higher than everyone around you. And that gives you more money to work with. And this is super important. It's a superpower for those who know how to run a marketing campaign properly. And a lot we can talk about this, but just giving you some ideas. So what does that look like? Well, in my marketing, I'm not offering free toothbrush. I'm not offering free whitening. I'm offering, yes, here's the service we're talking about. Yes, we are the authority, but how are we the authority? Because I wrote a book on it. Because you can request my free information package about this. And it just looks different in the hands of your target market. Okay. Now there's a place for this, but it can be very impactful used properly. So we talked about marketing. Let's talk about increasing the average transaction size through case acceptance and service mix changes. Okay. So what does that look like? Well, who is responsible for case acceptance in your office? I'm going to argue everyone. What happens when treatment plans don't get accepted today? Do they just die in insurance estimate land? Or is there a clear follow-up process? Do we have clear financial arrangements? And again, the number one key to case acceptance is not a great closer and not a great treatment coordinator. It is co-diagnosis. Co-diagnosis happens before the patient even knows, before you even know that there is a diagnosis, before you know what the patient's problem is. It's the patient coming along with you for the ride, finding out that they have a problem. And then when you are actually making the diagnosis, the patient is doing that with you and understands, oh, I have a problem. And there's a way to do this very clearly, very well, so the patient understands, oh, I have a problem I need to fix. That changes your case acceptance dynamic completely. It will change your practice trajectory forever. And like anything else, though, it requires intentional training and practice. And this is a 2-day event for us. Super important that you understand how to do this well, but you have the concept in your head now. 2 metrics to watch if you want to know your case acceptance is up to par. One is average patient yearly value. So how much the average patient spends in your practice in a year, and then how much the average new patient spends in your practice per year. Okay. Average patient yearly value should be north of $1,200. Average new patient yearly value should be north of $1,800. If you're below that, you're leaving money on the table. And again, really, really important, because I mentioned that marketing statistic earlier. If you can spend more than your competitors, then you have the ability to outmarket your competitors. And if a patient is worth more in your hands, then you also have the ability to outmarket to get that patient, right? Because if a patient in your office is worth $2,000 and in your competitor's office is worth $1,000, then you have twice as much money to work with. And you can have a very robust marketing budget, and you can spend more on the internal patient experience. And etc., etc. You get it. Same-day treatment is another low-hanging fruit. And again, if the patient is already there, what else can you do? If the doctor is either in the doctor chair or in the hygiene chair, right? And having systems for this is super important. Clear systems for co-diagnosis, fast finances, cross-trained team, and efficiency allows this to really blow up. You can do a lot of same-day treatment that isn't on the schedule if you're looking for it and you're systemized for it. So we teach our clients how to do this with training, with monitoring results, incentivizing the desired behavior within our teams. Billing per hour by provider is another really important thing to pay attention to. The average provider working 16 days per month, 7 productive hours per day. If you increased your billing per hour by $40, you add $53,000 at the end of the year. And I go all the way down to $200 increase per hour. That's like $250,000 per year added. It's actually not that hard. If your hourly billing is like $400, $500, you can easily get the $200 increase. It's actually very straightforward. A dentist should be with their own two hands billing $850 per hour and up, and a hygienist with their own two hands with a patient in front of them should be north of $300 or in the vicinity thereof. These are numbers where you are working efficiently and you're not really breaking a sweat. You're not like scrambling to do this, okay? And again, what you monitor improves. So track it hour by hour and watch what happens. And if you're struggling with this, try booking your schedule in dollar per unit of time working back from your goal. So if your goal is $850 per hour, divide that by the 6 time units you have in an hour. And then you know that every time unit's like $140. And that's how you book your schedule. And all of a sudden what ends up happening is you end up hitting goal way more often than you were. Now, efficiency, some people will say, yeah, but I take pride in my work. I want to make sure I provide quality. You can provide quality at speed. That's just called efficiency, okay? I'm not saying do sloppy work. You should never do that. You should always do the best work that you can, because if you don't, you have to deal with the problems. So do quality work, but learn to be efficient at it, okay? And again, this just takes calibration and intentional training of the whole team. So we talked about marketing, we talked about case acceptance. Let's talk about that last piece, which is increasing the frequency that the average client buys from you, or hygiene and recall. So what does that look like? So standardizing your hygiene visits is super important. Okay, again, must include co-diagnosis. A consistent circuit for communication with the doctor. So I always say the same things over and over again. Why? Because I get efficient at it, I get quick. The doctor knows exactly what I'm going to say, and the patient, if they end up seeing different providers, is used to the kind of communication they're getting because it's always the same. Pre-selling of treatment so that recall exams take less than 5 minutes is the standard. Now, this means the hygienist is taking the lead on recommending treatment based on what they see, and this requires standardization. Clear standards of practice agreed upon by the providers gives the hygienist the power and the empowerment to be able to do this so that your exams go faster, but also the hygienist has just spent the last half an hour talking about treatment. Instead of spending the last half an hour talking about everything's okay or something unrelated, and then the doctor comes in and, oh, you have a problem. Good luck with that. So what to do? Again, training, monitor results, incentivize the desired behavior, right? Over and over and over again, same thing. I got to talk for a minute about leadership, because if you want to grow your practice, you want to run at max value, and you don't get leadership right, you're toast. It is the most important skill to cultivate if you want to be successful in any business or really in anything in life. And it's also the one thing that none of us graduate in. So again, we have many workshops in our program that cover specifically this, but I want you to think about this picture. This is the thing I want to drive home, because it is the most important thing I can tell you about leadership. So there is a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Pat Lencioni. You've heard this book. You've probably seen it. If you haven't read it, I recommend you read it. And we teach an entire workshop about this. Why? Because most teams struggle with the 5 dysfunctions. 5 dysfunctions are an absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. What does every dentist want from their team? Commitment, accountability, and results. Now, how do you get there? Well, those are at the top of the pyramid. And so if we don't start by building trust with our team, getting comfortable with productive conflict, and I don't mean screaming at each other, I mean productive conflict, which means I feel safe to speak what I think. And I'm saying that not to be belligerent or to belittle people, but I can give my opinion of what I think of the situation as we're having a team discussion. and know that I will be heard and I'm safe to do that. And I'm not going to be, reprimanded for doing it. Because constructive conflict is how you get to commitment. And once you get to commitment, then you get accountability. Then you get results. People go about it backwards and they just want to beat people into accountability. You can't do that. You have to start at the bottom. There's no way to shortcut this. So trust is that foundation. You got to spend time with people. You got to have I recommend a culture champion, someone who is going to be the one to make sure that you guys do stuff together as a team. This cannot all be on your shoulders. Give it to a team member, but lead by example. As the owner, as the dentist, lead by example and go first. Give people trust, start trusting, and watch what happens. Now, it helps a lot if your team leaders are able to teach others and delegate effectively. So you got to teach them how to do it, which means you got to learn how to do it. You've got to spend the time to get better. That personal growth time is absolutely required for you to get better at this. In our program, we have what's called Private Group. This is our CEO coaching ground, and this is exactly what we teach there. So we want to be able to empower our teams because a team-driven practice is more valuable to a buyer. It's a lot more fun to own. It's predictable and resilient, and if you get taken out of practice like I did, it still runs. Here's what we learned so far. When you should start thinking about exit strategy. We talked about how to calculate maximum potential, revenue, what buyers are looking for, how to get top dollar, 3 ways to grow your practice, why you must be fully in control of your marketing, creating sustainable growth, differentiating your practice in a crowded market, and the one secret that differentiates most successful marketing campaigns from the rest and tipping that balance in your favor. When we talk about selling your practice, I want to mention just one thing. Some people are of the mind that the cheapest commission is the best option. And I've got an interesting case study. Someone I know well who has talked to us about our program for a while. He was going to sell his practice and he was working with someone who had a low commission. Thought he was getting a good deal because he wasn't going to spend as much on the commission. He talked with us. In fact, I talked to him just briefly. He explained the situation. I'm like, I feel like you're leaving money on the table. I connected him with a different broker and he got substantially more for his practice just by working with another broker. In fact, the difference in commission, there was a difference in commission. And the commission was actually probably twice as much as he was going to pay the previous broker, but he got almost 1.7 million more. And the difference in commission was nothing in the grand scheme of things. He was stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. So be careful about the low commission brokers. Okay. And he got better terms too, like substantially better terms. He was able to get way more money up front. He was able to get immediate cash. It was a better deal all around. So if you want to know about this, I'd be happy to tell you on a discovery call what we do. Here's what we do in our programs. We install a leadership system so your team will be trained and empowered to take care of the day-to-day operations of the practice. I want you to have more time to do dentistry, more time to do what you want to do. It's all about expanding freedom of time, freedom of money, so you can do what's most important to you. And if that's treating patients, fantastic. We install systems for everything, literally every touch point in the practice. We teach you how to market your practice and attract more new patients for the procedures you want more of. And we develop your business skill set as a practice owner so you are empowered and you know what to do. And again, our goal is not to take your practice and make it a $10 million practice. Our goal is to take your practice and get you to where you want to be, provided that it's a reasonable goal. Now, does it work? This is always the big question. So we have dozens and dozens of case studies, dozens. In fact, our website is full of them. There's a whole section. These are actual case studies that I filmed many years ago now, probably 3-4 years ago. I guess it's not many years, but a few years ago. And there's a whole bunch of new ones since. So if we look at these practices, like 63,000 gain per month after 24 months, 45,000 after 16 months, 63,000 after 28 months. We can go on and on and on, right? 45,000 after 8 months, 40,000 after 7 months, 80,000 after 5 months, 45,000 after 5 months, 106,000 in the program overall. So the person was in the program for the full time. Again, we can just go on and on and on. I'll skip a couple. 52,000 after 10 months, and then an additional. So this is like after 24 months now, they're up $85,000. Dr. Simone, 85,000 after 7 months, 144,000 after 36 months. These are per month increases. So you could do the math, right? Times 12, these are big numbers. So what does our program look like? Let's break it down for you very quickly. The transformation program itself has 2 levels. So the core transformation, the column on the left, has 29 different modules, literally everything that you need to grow practice. And a lot of the testimonials that I showed you, a lot of those case studies came from this program. Now we have an advanced level. Advanced transformation adds on a couple of things. One is a clinical hygiene program to standardize the clinical operation of your hygiene team. There is definitely a lot of hygiene training in the core program, but the advanced adds clinical hygiene. There's an infection prevention and control, or IPAC program, and then advanced is where you find private group. So that's CEO training ground. Then there is a marketing program, which you can add to either of these 2 programs, that gives you a full agency marketing function as part of our program. So we'll take over your website, we'll manage your website, we'll design a new website if you need it. Comprehensive SEO is included, CRM implementation, custom emails, digital newsletters, social media management, ad campaign management on Google and Meta, review management through a dashboard, call tracking and scoring, procedure-specific content. We'll even help you manage print campaigns, design of end-to-end funnels. If you need help with video, we can help you with that. Book licensing, strategy development, complete implementation support, and detailed reporting. All of that's part of the marketing program. Now, also, both programs include live workshops, so in person, which is in the Toronto area, or virtually on Zoom. This is all part of the program, okay, at any level. So transformation program, advanced transformation program, and the marketing program. If you want to know more about these programs, just reach out to our team, book a call. We'll be happy to discuss with you. And as a reminder, our programs come with a 3 times return on your investment guarantee. If you don't get 3 times what you put into the program in terms of fees to us, you'll get a proportional refund on the unrealized revenue. So on the return that you didn't get. Okay, so very simply, if you got 2x return, not 3, then the 1x return is like 1/3 of the return you didn't get, which means you get 1/3 of your investment back. Now, I've never had to pay anyone on this, but we offer it, and the details will be discussed with you on Discovery Call. A couple more examples. This is a brand new practice, a startup that launched maybe 4 months ago. And this practice, actually, they joined about a year ago, so maybe 8 months before they opened. And what ended up happening is they went from 0 to 400 patients in 4 months. They averaged over 100 new patients per month right now. And they just implemented really at a high level what we teach. So they used our program to open a new practice from scratch. I mentioned some of these case studies earlier. So Dr. Jacob, 2.5 years, doubled his practice. Dr. Birchfield, 4 years, doubled the practice. Dr. Swanland, 4 years, tripled the practice and sold. Dr. Cal, he doubled his practice in 4 years and opened 2 more clinics in that time frame. Dr. Peter Gunn here, he tripled his practice in 3 years, moved to a larger location. Again, many, many, many more like this. You can go to our website, click on Success Stories, and learn all about them. Now, you may be thinking, I've heard this before. Well, I'm going to suggest to you that you may be in a situation like this, where your practice has grown and you're at a plateau. And there's another level that you know you could get to, but you're not really sure how to get there. Right now, you're at good and you know you can get to great, but there's a problem. This is what happens to most practice owners when they want to go from good to great. Is they grab onto something, a shiny object, an idea. They don't really have a clear plan, and so they jump off from good, and there's a dip. And in that dip, before they start to climb up to great, they get scared. And at the bottom of that dip, they retreat. They retreat back to good. And the problem with retreating back to good is you never get to great, because good just becomes comfortable and you figure, oh, well, it's not worth the pain. I'm not sure how to get there. I tried, it didn't work. The problem with that is you don't have a clear path. What Elite Practice provides is the clear path. So you can go from good to great without the trial and error, without trying to figure it out, without breaking stuff, right? So what to do next? Speak to a member of our team. Stop retreating to good. Choose a different future, choose a different path. Do it now. Don't wait, because you're just going to retreat back to good. Click the link in the description and book a call now. Again, 3 times return guaranteed. I'll leave it up to you. You do what you think makes sense. I hope you got a lot of value out of this discussion today and it gave you a lot of ideas to think about. Again, if you want to ever talk to someone on our team, go ahead and click that link in the description. Go to our website if you want to book a call from there. However you do it, highly recommend you get on a call with our team. The initial discovery call is not to sell you something, it's to understand where you are and does what we do make any sense for you. All right, if you enjoyed this video, depending where you're watching it, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you thumbs up or like the video. And if you have not clicked the button to receive notifications, I recommend that you do that because we put out videos every week. All right, I will see you in the next video.